Coming up on Tech News today, Samsung crushes Apple, at least in one respect. AT&T redefines unlimited. It now means throttled. And we reveal the smartest browser users in the world. All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, July 29th, 2011. Tech News Today is brought to you by NewTek, makers of the new TriCaster 850, which if you're watching video, you're watching it right now. Find out more by visiting NewTek, NEWTEK.com. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Denise Howell.
He's Iyaz Akhtar.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar behind the board. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. And
Hey, Iyaz, what are you doing back there?
I'm failing horribly.
This is weird. You're not failing. You look great. I just don't know why you're sitting there.
I'm running the
Jason
board
sits.
for some reason today, and because Jason's on vacation, and I'm trying to get the shot. Hey, look, there's Scott Johnson, who's also
Scott
with us.
Johnson also joining us. Welcome, Scott.
Nice deflection, Iyaz. Hey, it's great to be here on Friday. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for being on. So Denise came up for the new studio. It was nice. How was This Week in Law this morning?
This Week in Law was good. I think our audio issues were slightly longer than yours, so you're doing great.
Thanks for clearing those out for us.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got those out of the way. It's Friday. We've made it through a week, Sarah.
Tom, it's been a fun week.
It has.
It's been a learning experience.
It has.
We've tried,
Been that too.
had some audio issues, had some just personnel fights.
What are you talking about?
I'm just making that up. Actually, we all got along pretty well.
I
this
mean,
week.
yes, those were bad.
They were bad.
Yeah.
We just
I put a table in the conference room
wrestled it
yesterday.
out. Did you?
I finally felt like I contributed.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
You deserve a beer. Happy
Thank
Liquid
you.
Friday.
I'm having a
Happy Liquid
Mighty
Friday.
Arrow Pale Ale. Cheers to a week of Tech News Today in the news studio.
Indeed.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And Scott and Iyaz. Cheers. Iyaz is driving, so he can't. He'll get to his liquid, I'm sure, immediately after he's done switching the show.
After he stops driving the show.
Yeah. Let's
Slow the show down. You're being reckless.
Let's start off with some numbers from IDC and Strategy Analytics getting a lot of attention today, reporting that in smartphones worldwide, so these are different than those Nielsen numbers we talked about yesterday. Worldwide, Apple has now surpassed Nokia as the largest smartphone maker in the world. Apple sold 20.3 million iPhones last quarter, up 142% from the same quarter a year earlier. And according to Strategy Analytics, that gives it an 18.5% share of the worldwide smartphone market. Nokia fell to 15.2%. So not only one model of phone, essentially, I mean, you can count the 3GS as a second model, I suppose, but a phone that's over a year old at this point.
That's the thing, up 142% for Apple compared to last year, considering that the iPhone 4 is, I mean, we don't really know this for a fact, but we assume is being phased out sooner than later.
I think most people will laugh at me when I say this, but usually after a year, the iPhone starts to feel like it needs to be replaced. I start to outgrow it somehow. I remember the 3G especially started to feel really slow and janky. The iPhone 4 doesn't do that.
Well, no, but do you say that about the 3G because some people had the 3GS and went, oh yeah, it's a little zippier?
Well, no, because I got the 3GS immediately. I'm like saying before the 3GS came out.
Interesting.
I was even feeling it. And the 3GS I was feeling a little cramped in too.
Well, and the 3GS is now available so cheaply and is still getting people buying them brand new for that reason that, you know, we all are waiting for the latest and greatest, but there are a lot of people who are perfectly happy to go and up Apple's market share that way.
Yeah.
I know what you mean, Tom. It's like I think, ooh, iPhone 5, can't wait to see what they do, but it's not like there's some glaring thing I need to be changed or updated. Pretty happy with the phone as it is.
Scott, you're an iPhone user as well. Do you feel the same thing?
Yeah, I feel like the 4 is, I don't know, found a place that's a little more comfortable, maybe a little ahead of its time. By its time, I mean its own time, by Apple's own time, and it didn't necessarily need that sort of immediate, let's see pictures of it in the spring and release it in the summer kind of cycle this time, which is, I think, probably why we haven't seen it. I try to figure out if some of this, with with me being so satisfied with the phone for a longer period of time might have something to do with the fact that Apple isn't showing us anything yet. And maybe if they showed me something, I'd start to go, oh, I got to do that now, even if it was just words and not, you know, a functioning device or any kind of pictures or video. It's interesting to me that these statistics don't include any Android stuff, but that's because they're talking about single manufacturer of a phone, right? Like you would include Motorola in this or somebody else in that list, not necessarily, because if you combined all the Android phones together, that would be a larger number, I would assume.
That was the Nielsen number that we saw yesterday. And these are also worldwide, so you got to count that in. But then when you look at the handset market overall, so these numbers that we talked about were just for smartphones. IDC notes that Apple's share of the overall handset market also more than doubled in the second quarter, rising to 5.6% from 2.6% a year earlier. And I think that's an indication that smartphones are becoming more common. Apple's now the world's fourth largest manufacturer of mobile phones, though. Nokia still in front of them, Samsung and LG in front of that. Samsung now dominant. Samsung's just crushing it in overall phones because they're doing well with smartphones, but they've always made good feature phones and good just regular old handsets that make calls. That shut everybody up. They're like, Samsung? I have nothing to say about. We'll get to this a little later, but the Samsung Galaxy S2 actually is pretty highly anticipated here in the U.S. and it's coming.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how well Samsung does as people move away. Well, not that people are going to move away from feature phones, but more and more people end up moving towards smartphones.
I live with a Samsung user.
And how is that?
She has turned her back on the iPhone.
Yeah. Well, I do know about that. She does an Android show even. She's really gone.
What makes me a little sad about these numbers is I remember in the 90s, man, Nokia was the stuff, man. You had to get a Nokia phone. And those were, of course, days well before smartphones and what they have become today. But I don't know, a little piece of me feels like, you know, it's like when Sony kind of loses favor or something like that. This once really kind of cool brand takes, you know, a back seat to these whippersnappers in Cupertino.
I had nothing but Nokia phones until about 2005.
Yeah,
I mean, it was easily, at least in my opinion, the best that I could get.
My first phone was a Samsung, now that I'm thinking about it, but then it was Nokia after that until I got the Razr, and then I went from the Razr to the iPhone. Let me clarify, though. Nokia is still #1 worldwide overall phone shipments. They're falling. They've lost 20% year over year, so it's not great news, but they're still #1. It's just that Samsung has climbed into that #2 spot, 70.2 million unit shipments in the second quarter versus Nokia's 88.5, so they're catching up to Nokia. Let's move to a U.S. story that's got everybody's attention right now. The national debt ceiling. August 2nd, if you're following the story in the U.S., you know that that's the day that the government goes broke and has to stop writing checks if they don't figure something out. Only reason we're talking about it on Tech News Today is that wireless spectrum is starting to become a political football in this discussion. Both Senators Rockefeller and Harry Reid have plans to raise money from the VIA, the Voluntary Incentive Auction of spectrum, that is part of the budget plan. So Rockefeller's plan would raise $6.5 billion. Reid's plan would raise $13.5 billion and would give the FCC authority to auction off TV spectrum currently held by TV broadcasters and pay for financial incentives to entice them to give that spectrum up. So they wouldn't be forced to give it up, but they would get a little cut of the sales if they were to give it up. And then a big part of that D-block spectrum would be set aside for public safety agencies. In fact, the D-block spectrum itself would be set aside for public safety agencies to create a national wireless broadband network that emergency officials could use during an emergency. That was supposed to happen in the 700 megahertz auction a couple of years ago, and they couldn't get anybody to buy it, though.
Does this strike you as a little bit like a homeowner in foreclosure rummaging through the attic and trying to find valuable things that could be sold off in order to make the next payment?
It's not only that, it's the guy that borrowed your mower that you said, yeah, keep it as long as you want. And you're like, hey, if I cut you in, I need to sell the mower. I'll give you a little cut of it if you let me sell the mower because I really got to pay this mortgage.
I wonder what the broadcasters and the people who already kind of hold the spectrum, and then they're saying it's unused, but why is it unused? Are big networks, I don't know who owns it, but let's say NBC Universal or somebody owns a huge chunk of spectrum. Do they have plans for that? Do we know? Is it just sitting there and nobody cares?
It's spectrum that was freed up during the digital TV transition. And, of course, any television station worth its salt is going to hold up onto as much spectrum as it can because it's valuable. And it's just been found that after that transition that there's lots of spectrum that just isn't being used by anybody.
But if it's valuable and unused, and someone like, let's say, NBC is going to get paid to give away some of that spectrum, why not do that? They get money instead of just sitting on something that no one's using and they're not getting money for.
Yeah, that's the idea of the voluntary incentive thing is, you know, let's give them incentive to get off those licenses. Of course, some senators are saying we should just take it from them. It's public airwaves anyway. No reason to pay them anything. A CNET column written by consultant Larry Downs, who blogs for CNET, speculates that net neutrality anger is actually holding up the VIA from approval, because a lot of Congress people are upset at the FCC's net neutrality guidelines and want to use this as a way to force the FCC to drop those guidelines. One of the arguments they bring up is that they attached open access rules to the spectrum last time, and they don't think they got as much money for it as they would have if they hadn't.
Yeah, I think it was the C block, and that it was anything that was under those net neutrality guidelines went for less money.
Yeah, well, that's what they claim, although Google is the one who got those open access provisions added to that auction because they were willing to bid a certain amount, and the theory at the time was, well, we'll add those provisions if Google will bid it because that'll drive up the price.
Again, this sort of strikes me as we have a resource that has heretofore been free and open, and we're going to start charging for it. It's like, you know, all of a sudden you're going to get popped $20 to enter the Library of Congress because they can.
Yeah. And a lot of people feel this. There's some senators who feel the same way. They're just like, this is not the place for us to make the money. And frankly, as much as it sounds like a lot, $13.5 billion does very little in the trillions of dollars of debt that they're dealing with. It's a game of politics going on. Although the CTIA, the Wireless Trade Association, did send a letter to President Obama yesterday saying, please, please auction off the spectrum. We'll buy it. We need it. We want it. So there's definitely a market for it. AT&T is going to drive home the fact that they don't have enough spectrum by throttling their unlimited plans starting October 1st.
Oh, boo.
Yeah.
This is a bad movie.
That is not Mike Hiss. That's Sarah Hiss.
Yeah. That's what I do, you know, at the previews at the movie theaters when something looks bad.
Starting October 1st, smartphone customers with unlimited data plans, these are the folks that are grandfathered in because they don't offer them anymore.
These are all of us because we bought early.
But if you buy early and you got an unlimited plan, you've stuck with AT&T through thick and thin, and lots of thin, then you still got this unlimited data plan. Starting October 1st, if you are among the top 5% of the heaviest data users, you will have your connection throttled until the next billing cycle. Now, they don't say how much, but you'll still be able to use unlimited data, just at a slower speed.
So they're just going to slow. Why call it an unlimited data plan, grandfather or not? Just quit calling it that. Why don't they just come to my house and stab me in the neck with a knife real hard? That'd be even better. Because this is ridiculous. I bought and paid for that thing, stayed with AT&T for this reason, and now they're just, you know, in effect yanking it away. I realize it's still there, but I don't want half the speed.
In the neck, though.
Right.
Well, no.
I think
But they may as well.
Somebody's going to get ticked off enough to sue about this because, you know, unlimited versus throttled is not the same thing.
Right. It's a limitation, isn't it? I mean, I've got a lawyer now agreeing with me. This is good.
I'm not saying that there's necessarily a valid. I'm
sure
that AT&T has disclaimed their way around this every which way from Sunday, but it does strike me as an advertising misnomer to call something unlimited.
It's funny because I switched over from AT&T to Verizon earlier this year because I had such bad service with AT&T. But Verizon is definitely slower. As far as data goes overall, it's something that I said, okay, this is going to be the compromise that I make. AT&T is just snappier. Well, am I in that top 5% where if I had stuck with AT&T, now it's no longer snappier, and there's even less of an incentive for people to stay with AT&T? I mean, one of the, from a Ars Technica article, it said, okay, top 5% might be someone like 4 streaming movies per month, or 5 hours of streaming music per month might put you in that upper tier. 5 hours of streaming music? I do that every month.
Yeah, well, and that's what think about it. If you're throttling the top 5%, you're saying we're going to throttle some people every month.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not going to go look at a month and go, hey, actually, we have plenty of capacity this month. It's fine. You're saying we're using this as a way to control costs. This has nothing to do with bandwidth. They also kind of tried to sneak in here that, see, we've got this spectrum crunch, and that's why we should be allowed to buy T-Mobile, because look at what we have to do. And really what this is trying to do is get people off those unlimited plans and push them into limited plans. I think it might backfire. It might force a lot of people to suddenly say, you know what? The only reason I was staying with AT&T is the stupid unlimited plan. If it's going to get throttled anyway, I might as well go to Verizon or Sprint.
Right.
Yeah, plus it's such a strange bit of timing. We've got all these cloud services coming online or soon coming online, including Apple's, and that's a big deal, and everybody's excited about it. But it seems like this weird inverse movement. You've got this movement toward cloud-based services, and the service providers are going this way and saying throttle this and cut this and no more unlimited. And it seems so counterproductive to me. And it's almost like the companies aren't talking to each other. Google's not talking to AT&T, Apple's not talking to AT&T or whatever, but they're coming out with these services that I really want, but I can no longer have, relative unlimited access to them. And I don't know, just soured on the whole thing. It's horrible.
Well, if the unlimited users get together and start talking to each other and all start really upping their usage, then yeah, the top 5% is going to get throttled, but everyone else is going to have a higher comparison basis.
Once I get throttled, I'm going to download an app that just constantly sends as many bits as possible. And just let it
write
run.
one.
Stick it to him, Tom.
I knew a guy in college who did that. He got upset at the dorms, so he went and he plugged capacitors into all the outlets and tried to use as much electricity as possible. Just I don't know.
Nice. Very green.
I'm not
And
saying
Illinois was 5 degrees warmer all year.
I don't advocate that solution. That's not a good way to go. And let's be clear. We've talked about this on the show before, but these data caps are price rises. There is even on the wireless spectrum where there are different issues than landline, they do not have to put these data caps in place. There are other ways for them to raise the money, but it's a way for them to force people to spend more money and be able to raise prices. And if they have less competition, which is what AT&T wants by buying T-Mobile, then they'll be able to get away with more of this stuff. The Dell Streak 10 Pro has finally made its global debut, but you have to be a resident of China to buy it. Dell Streak 10 unveiled at a Beijing press event. Okay, I'm gonna describe the specs. Tell me if this wows you. If this is a tablet that you're jealous of, because we don't have it here.
Okay.
1 gigahertz NVIDIA Tegra 2 T20 chip, 1 gigabyte of RAM, 1280 by 800 Corning Gorilla Glass display, 5 megapixel camera, 2 megapixel camera back and front, regular size SDHC expansion, and a 16 gig Wi-Fi tablet with 2 gigs of cloud storage included will run you 2,999 yen, so about 465 bucks.
Well, I can tell by the way that you read off those specs how you feel about this tablet, Tom.
My feelings? I'm sorry. That was not
What
a fair.
a leading
that was not a fair
question that was.
test.
Yeah, it sounds kind of meh. It's not that it's not going to be a nice
It's
tablet,
not
but it's
bad,
not giving me
The
anything
price is all right.
wild.
I should have
The
started
the
by
price
just
is
reading the
okay.
specs. Yeah, the price
Yeah.
is pretty decent. It's
And a
about-
5 megapixel camera. I mean, just on the surface of this, that sounds like a lot better camera than the back facing one of my iPad right now.
It definitely is.
Yeah, but beyond that, I mean, the price seems commensurate with the specs. I have no idea what the battery life's like. I'm guessing it's not great. So yeah, I'm not moving to China for this, Tom, if that's what you're asking.
But it's a nice tablet. I shouldn't speak against it. It's got all the same specs as everybody else. I think that's what disappointed me. It's an Android tablet, and it just looks like every other Android tablet.
Yeah, I mean, competition in this area is good, but you're going to have to really do something special to defeat Apple here.
AptaQuant, a Vancouver-based web consulting company, gave more than 100,000 participants an IQ test while monitoring which browser they used to take the test.
Love this.
Now, we can't scientifically say that this proves that any particular browser user is more intelligent than another, but the results are interesting.
All right, let's hear them.
Users of Opera scored the highest at well over 120.
Okay.
So essentially, if you use Opera, you're the smartest person in the world
But aren't there
that took this test.
But aren't there fewer people who use Opera than, say, Firefox?
There are fewer people who get a 120 on an IQ test.
And they just all you're more likely to be smarter and to use Opera.
Yeah,
is the way that this goes.
Users of Internet Explorer 6, released in 2001, scored the lowest on the test at just over 80. So, as we've been saying, IE6, one of the most insecure browsers you can use. That seems to make sense. Internet Explorer users in general scored lower than the average, while Chrome, Firefox, and Safari users were slightly above average. But the smartest people were Opera users and users of Camino, the open source browser, as well as those using Explorer with Chrome Frame installed.
Wow. Seems like a bunch of uppity browser users to me. Like, these are guys that are alone. I'm not using your plebeian browsers. I'm going to go use Opera since only 5 of us do. And that's
which browser do you use, Scott?
Mostly I use Chrome. I occasionally jump back with Firefox for certain tasks.
I use Chrome and Firefox. Maybe we're just not smart enough to understand why we should use Opera. Maybe that's what this means.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't think that if you immediately start using Opera, you're going to do anything to boost your IQ.
Yeah, there's not a converse to this. It doesn't make you smarter to use Opera.
You have to be smart already.
But I'd be using this in my marketing materials if I'm Opera, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
My wife's going to be thrilled. She uses Camino, and I tease her about it all the time, but apparently she is exceptionally high.
Is she one of those cloners, Scott?
I don't know, but she does. She knows more than I do, and I kind of actively avoid Opera, so obviously I'm in the wrong demographic here.
Yeah, and we'll never understand why, because we're not Opera users.
Nope.
I enjoy the Opera mini browser on my iPad.
Well, you're sort of smarter than the rest of us. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. How I feel too.
Huh? All right. Finally, Andrew Koo over at Tom's Hardware wrote up an exhaustive study on whether solid-state drives are actually more reliable than hard drives. Now, this is an interesting issue because generally what people think is, oh, solid-state drive, no moving parts.
Yeah, that's better.
That's going to be better. At the same time, though, write endurance is often thought of as a problem with solid-state drives. They're like, well, no moving parts, it should work better, but there's a limit to how many times you can write and erase to a solid-state sector, and so maybe that's a bad thing because it won't last as long. Well, Andrew wrote up and said, essentially, you get about 31 years of use out of a solid-state drive, so that read-write problem is not an issue. But they wanted to find out if there were any other issues that made solid-state drives more reliable. It's a great read. It's about 8 pages long. I highly recommend, if you're interested in this topic, to take the time. But to summarize, a few myths were busted. First of all, drives do not have a tendency to fail in the first year and then stabilize and then fail near the end of their life. It's not a bell curve. It's a rising tide. They don't fail at the beginning, and they fail at greater rates as they get older. Also, SMART, the system that's supposed to alert you that your drive is failing, is not a reliable warning system. In over 1/3 of cases of failure, SMART did not notice anything was wrong.
Not that smart, then.
And enterprise and consumer drives fail similarly. Enterprise drives are not more reliable than consumer drives in general. Lack of moving parts does not seem to give solid-state drives an advantage, and apparently, and I won't go through all of their work because it's much too intricate, but they did a lot. They took a lot of studies from a lot of data center users like Google, people that have been using solid-state drives in general in a lot of places, and found that SSDs fail at about the same rate as hard drives, as magnetic hard drives. It's often firmware that's to blame, and firmware updates sometimes fix the problems as well, but they don't seem to be any more reliable than regular hard drives.
So what does this mean for our lives as technological consumers?
It means when you're shopping for a hard drive that you probably don't have to worry about whether it's a solid-state drive or a magnetic drive. Just buy the one that fits you best and is cheapest. You will get a better performance from a solid-state drive. It will be a little faster, so that is the difference. But you can get a bigger drive from a magnetic drive these days, so it's kind of that. There's your decision point. Don't worry about solid-state drives, failing because of read-write performance, but don't think they're actually going to be more reliable. A lot of the companies are marketing them as more reliable when they're not necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's important to know, is that the marketing will definitely lead you to believe. Think about all that stuff whirring and the engine inside. You don't need any of that anymore.
Yeah,
it's just the smart solid-state drive.
They're lighter.
If it's going to fail as often, that does not help.
Lighter
Well,
and faster.
the one good thing about it is they do preserve battery life, especially in sleep state. So there is some additional advantage, but knowing that if you're making a huge decision, well, I'm not going to have the capacity, but at least I'll have this quiet, more efficient, less battery sucking drive. But you really want the extra capacity. It's nice to know that there's not a real major reason why I shouldn't do that anyway. I have to admit, I've been led to believe and felt this entire time with SD drives or solid state drives that we were going to see something that was going to last a much longer time. And this kind of proves that's not the case. So.
Another interesting thing they found, and they note that they couldn't find a reason for this, but the folks who run these data centers constantly raved about Intel's solid-state drives as not failing nearly as often as other brands, but then none of the actual studies and test results bore that out. So they don't know why people feel that way.
So they've been snowed.
But maybe, I don't know, but that is the belief of the people that use this stuff. All right, let's move on to the news fuse. News fuse explosion.
Light the fuse, Tom.
I lit it. Yahoo and Alibaba have resolved their differences over the spin-out of Alipay, a Chinese PayPal of sorts. The chief benefit here is that Alibaba will get $2 billion, but no higher than $6 billion in proceeds from an IPO of Alipay. And why that's good, Yahoo and SoftBank hold stakes in Alibaba. And if Alipay didn't pay anything to Alibaba, it would have been like just stealing from Yahoo and SoftBank. So Yahoo's complaint had been that Alipay got spun out without any value returned. This gives them some value. And there's a couple other things they get out of this deal as well.
All right, we're going to do another earnings report, and this time it's Samsung. They made $37.4 billion in revenue in the second quarter of this year. That's a 4% increase compared to this time last year. However, profits were down 18% year over year. So Samsung says its revenue bump is due to its mobile sales. The company also announced a new policy, no more releasing data on phone sales, which one might guess has something to do with that little legal tiff that Samsung has with Apple right now.
Yeah. Next time it's like profits were whatever they were, and we're not telling you why.
And are they lumping tablets in with mobile?
Oh, that's a good question. I did not clarify that. So
I would lump tablets in with mobile, but
yeah, they probably
I don't
would.
know.
Patent poor Google just got a little richer. The Mountain View monster just grabbed more than 1,000 patents from old Big Blue, IBM. They cover a range of topics including microprocessing chips, regional databases, and memory fabrication and architecture. The 6 manufacturers like HTC who are defending Android patent cases are probably hoping something useful comes out of that bunch there.
I love how Google's patent poor. You're search rich, but you're patent poor.
Yeah.
All right, those cool little Foursquare discounts that you get for checking in or being mayor are actually going to get a lot better now, because starting today, Foursquare gets Groupons daily and real-time deals in their apps. Groupon offers are live for users in the Chicago area, because Groupon's based in Chicago, so they always get all the cool stuff first. But it will roll out to the rest of the U.S. and Canada by Sunday, and that that joins Living Social. They partnered with Gilt recently. Foursquare is really partnered with a lot of people who can give deals that Foursquare can't.
I've been noticing a lot more deals showing up. That's cool. Taiwan's HTC may have some patent headaches, but the aspirin for HTC execs is today's earnings report. The company sold 12.1 million units in the second quarter, totaling a 123.7% year-over-year growth rate. And after Q2 taxes, that brings year-over-year growth to 102.9%. To translate for you less numbers inclined, HTC rocked it.
The International Space Station may not crash into the ocean, or at least not as soon as we thought it would. NASA says people will work aboard station at least through 2020. And MSNBC notes that the ISS stakeholders are investigating keeping the thing open until 2028. Vitaly Davidov, which is an awesome name, of the Russian Space Agency, also backpedaled on the date for deorbiting the ISS. It's not going to be like tomorrow or even in the next decade, maybe.
You remember Skylab?
Yeah. That hit in Australia, right? Like in the Outback or something?
Something like that.
Yeah. Google and Skyhook aren't the only location databases storing your MAC addresses. Looks like Microsoft does it too. And if you want to know if you're tracked, Ely Burstein, a postdoctoral researcher at the Stanford Security Laboratory, has put up a website that lets you query the Microsoft database and see if you or your loved one's devices are listed. Go to elie.im/demo/geolive.php, put in your MAC address, and find out where Microsoft thinks you are. They couldn't find me. I put in my MAC address.
No? Did they
not listed.
Just nothing.
Microsoft
It wasn't like they were wrong.
They've
They just
never
said,
tracked me, no.
don't know where you are, Tom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yesterday, we mentioned that Ubisoft might implement harsh DRM to Driver San Francisco. That's going to require you to always be connected to the internet in order to play, and people were kind of mad about that. Today, they clarified to PC Gamer that Ubisoft has seen a clear reduction in piracy of our titles, which required a persistent online connection. And from that point of view, the requirement is a success. Or a success. I'm not drinking.
I know. See, that's the problem.
Success. Success. I'm just not very successful with that word. So if you're whining about this whole thing, go ahead, but I don't think they're listening.
Apparently not.
They took some serious grief about this for a title a couple of years ago, and they just keep doing it, and they must be seeing. I mean, they must be seeing that success, that word you're trying to say, because otherwise, gamers hate it. They get mad. They boycott the PC version. I would have thought it was bad for them, but if it's enough piracy killed, maybe it's better for their bottom line.
I doubt it's really that much. They say it is.
I don't know.
What do you know?
Yeah.
Okay, hush money or awesome security policy, you decide. Facebook has a bug bounty program out in which researchers will be paid for reporting security holes. Google has one of these too. A lot of people do this. The bounty starts at $500 and has no maximum set, but will only be paid to researchers who follow Facebook's responsible disclosure policy and agree not to go public with the vulnerability information until Facebook has fixed the problem. And that's actually fairly standard.
I vote awesome security policy.
I think awesome. I think it's well done. Most people seem to agree. Let's move on to la randomizer, as the French say.
Randomizer.
Randomizer.
Oh, she just had to do it exactly how I did it.
Yeah, you stoked her into. She's like, oh, I'm not letting
Skipped you, randomizer lady.
Folks at Duke University, two Duke University researchers in particular, believe their mesh casing could grant the gift of invisibility to things underwater. According to the proposed model, a specially designed shell punctuated by complex patterns of permeability and millimeter-sized pumps would eliminate the drag and wake caused by an object as it moves through the water. Utilizing the penetrable gaps in the case, water would at first accelerate, then decelerate to its original speed before exiting. So this is a different invisibility cloak than the light-based one. This keeps you invisible because it keeps the water around you stable.
Very James Bond.
Oh, yeah. Stealthy military application is what I'm thinking. Like submarines nobody can see and stuff. That's great.
Yeah.
It's like, if we take the military out of it, is there ever a good implementation of having an invisibility cloak underwater?
Yeah, all those...
Oh, if you're like swimming with sharks.
If you're at a really exclusive pool and you don't want to see the maintenance workers.
Or you don't want to get kicked out.
Yeah.
Because you're not supposed to be there.
Sneaking into a really
because it's not your country club.
The bad news is the design doesn't quite work for large-scale real-world implementations yet. In fact, vehicles only 1 centimeter across work so far. But
TC says fishing.
Yeah, they'll get there. It's a fishing scheme. Really quickly, want to thank the folks at New Tech. We're using their new TriCaster 850 in the new studio here at TWiT. It's like having our own giant TV truck, except it's like just a little bigger than my own head. It's a 24-channel system. Everything you need to make a TV show, including virtual sets, the ability to switch in high def. It's just absolutely fabulous. We can use the TriCaster for desktop or portable production. You can take it on the road. If you'd like to learn more about the TriCaster for your own needs or for your organizations, check them out, newtek.com, NEWTEK.com. And, man, we're really happy to have the new TriCaster. It's freaking awesome.
It looks so good. I love it.
Hey, Sarah?
Yes, Tom?
You want to do the calendar?
I'd love to do the calendar. That is a really good idea. Samsung.
Hey, look who plays the calendar noise only once. Iyaz Akhtar.
Ooh.
Take that, Jason.
All right, yeah. Howell. One for the money. All right, so Samsung is teasing U.S. customers with a sign-up page for the Galaxy S2. So if you fill out a form, add your name, email address, mobile phone number, carrier of your choice, then Samsung is supposedly going to keep you in the loop on special offers. So if you're excited about the phone, you might want to give them your information if you trust them. HP has sent out an email to developers asking them to start submitting apps for the Pre-3, which supposedly is supposed to be out by the end of the summer. Now, we're almost into August, but this might be a good sign for anybody who thought that they weren't going to make summer after all. And my mic fell. And SpaceX is on track to send a supply ship to the International Space Station in November, which of course is just another step closer to eventually delivering people.
Yeah, this restored a little bit of my faith in the space program, that we actually have a scheduled launch from a private company to do something that is worthwhile. I'm excited about that. So
Somebody's got to get food up there.
Yeah, exactly. Those guys will starve.
Yeah.
No, there's Soyuz rockets, but we need more than just that. We skipped a story earlier, and somebody in the chat room pointed it out to me. I wanted to get back to it real quickly. It would have been a great transition from our smartphone market share story into the debt ceiling thing. Apple apparently has more cash on hand than the United States. The U.S. Treasury Department shows that the country has an operating cash balance of $73.7 billion. Apple's most recent financial results put its cash reserves at $76.4 billion.
We got to send Steve to Washington.
Jobs in 2012?
He's probably not going to do it, but stroke of the pen.
I mean, we need money, right?
Yeah.
So,
look,
wow.
The government's going to have to outfit the entire. You're going to have to get rid of all your Windows machines, but
we need iGovernment 5.
I can take care of this problem for you.
Test for the Republicans whether they'll go ahead and just acquire
One
Apple.
more thing, iGov.
That'll be it. I can't wait. There's a reason we haven't heard about the iPhone 5 for a while. They're
That's
holding
right.
out for the big iGov
One more
announcement.
thing. Balanced budget. There's an app for that. Amy writes into our email address, tnt@twit.tv, says, hey, whenever you guys say there's no future for the DS system, she's talking about the Nintendo DS, and that everyone is using their phones, I think you guys are living in a tech bubble. My children are 12, 14, and 16. None of the younger two friends have smartphones. There are no way that parents will pay for data on the children's phones. It just isn't going to happen. I don't know what the 16-year-olds are using for phones, but they all have DS systems. They all use them a lot. The games they play for hours and hours. Heck, for weeks and weeks. Go to any waiting room where there are children. You will see DSs. When they go play at each other's houses, you have to convince them to shut off the darn machines. I think any problem with the sales of DS is not smartphones, but that all the children already have one, and the upgrade was not worth the $250. Their current one worked just fine.
Yeah, I have a 7-year-old, and he has a DS, but I got to say, he likes his iDevices a lot more, and he doesn't have a phone. But he has the things that we've passed along as a family. He has our old iTouch. He has our first generation iPad.
That's right. Don't forget the iPod Touch, not a phone.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say the apps are more compelling for him. He still has a DS, and he sort of trots it out as a novelty, but I sure wouldn't want to, put a whole business behind something having novelty appeal.
Yeah, I think Amy might be living in a DS bubble a little bit, just to kind of coin her phrase. I have 3 kids almost the same age. I have an 11-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 17-year-old. They all love video games, and they all had a DS at one point, but every DS we have in this house is completely, shelved somewhere, gathering dust. Everybody plays stuff on their iPod Touch, which is an affordable alternative. And once you get into how many apps you can get for how cheap you can get them and share an account across 3 people on one system, it's kind of not even competition. And as much as I love Nintendo and I want to see them succeed, and I love their portable business, telling me to spend $39 on a game that I can get an relatively equivalent experience from a 99-cent app, and oftentimes a free app, is a really hard sell. And 3D or not, I think they're in trouble. And there's a reason why they dropped that price. If it was going so great for every family and household outside the tech bubble, they wouldn't have done this. There's a reason they did it.
Well, I think Amy does bring up a good point, that because we did talk about it in relation to phones, and even if you change it to iPod Touches, it's not phones, and I think I was guilty of not thinking of the right market here. So I'm glad she wrote in, but yeah, I think that's why it's not just the fact that they don't want to upgrade; it's the fact that there's other devices that actually just do a lot more.
Got another email from Bob in Santa Cruz, California. After your discussion of the great graph by Nielsen and smartphone rankings for last month, you went on to speculate about why a similar trend doesn't appear now and isn't likely to happen in the near future for tablets. I think you missed a very important point in trying to answer this question. That is cost. Android phones became competitive and the prices plunged as there were carrier subsidies and other promotion incentives to not choose an iPhone. In the tablet space, I don't think you'll ever see that happen. If all Android phones were priced like the iPhone, I doubt the stats would look as they appear today. Until other tablets can be much more competitively priced against the iPad will continue to run away with market share.
That's a really good point, Bob.
It is. I mean, I think that's what has disappointed people, at least in 2011 with tablets, is you see the specs for tablet let's the Zoom, for example, just to pick one. And it's like there are a lot of things that seemed great about it, but it wasn't a lot cheaper than the iPad. So then the fact that it didn't have a lot of apps and it didn't have native email and that sort of thing, or I'm sorry, that was the playbook. But there were a lot of Android apps that just didn't measure up, didn't make any sense that they were competitively priced. They needed to be a lot less.
Well, and if you recall, the iPhone originally had no subsidy, and then eventually they said, "Well, we've got to do it. We've got to bring this to a subsidized $199 price to be able to compete."
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, but do you guys see anecdotally among your friends? I see a lot of people who try to go to the Android world and who try it out and then come back to the iPhone world because it's just easier for them.
My wife did the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
I got her the Samsung Galaxy S2 unlocked for her birthday. I said, why don't you take the SIM out of your iPhone and try it out? She did that for a week and has not gone back. Mm-hmm. The iPhone is now an iPod Touch for her. She still uses it here and there for some apps because she's got to do App Slappy with Scott Johnson.
That's right.
But she also still uses the iPad. She's got a Samsung Tab, the new the 10-inch. But she's had no world of problems with that, no end of problems with that. And she's like, the iPad is still the better tablet, but Android has totally won her over on the phone space.
That's good to hear.
All right, let's finish up with thanking our Redditors. TechNewsToday.reddit.com has over 1,600 readers who submit stories, help vote things up and down, help us decide what we're going to include in the show. Thanks to Enjoy What You Have, 83, Tony W, Pete C, Sloanen, Silly Wampa, A Loud Noise, Pete C, and more, who submitted stories to technewstoday.reddit.com. Appreciate your help with all of that, absolutely. And bricks, the bricks are arriving. Bricks.twit.tv. We got a couple examples here on the video. Heil Sound got their brick in here.
Brent By from Ocean Studio.
Our photographer, Brent By, who's responsible for all the lighting and camera. Ocean Studio, he's got his. We also got some of the smaller ones. Thank you, Leo, from GP. That one's here. Which one you got there, Denise?
I have Tracy Freeman, an old TWiT fan.
Aw, thank you, Tracy. Anyway, so the folks who yes, your bricks have arrived. They'll go up in the lobby out there, but there's still space available. If you want to buy a brick, go to bricks.twit.tv. You too could have your words, just like Tracy and GP, up on the wall in there for us to see every day, and for all the fans to see when they come in and watch TWiT and all the shows. So go to bricks.twit.tv and buy yourself a brick. Makes a good gift if you have a TWiT fan in your family. Makes an excellent gift. You can even buy a copy of the brick. And
I bought a copy of mine.
Did you get a copy of yours? Yeah. The copy of your brick, now you can see these are thin because they're meant to be put up on the wall. But your copy will be a full-size brick.
Yeah. They're heavy too.
Yeah. Suitable for throwing.
But you shouldn't throw them at another person.
No, never, or through a window.
Unless they're a TWiT hater, in which case,
or
I'll trail off there.
We don't advocate ever throwing a brick at a TWiT hater.
No.
Legally.
But if you're Felix the cat, you may be fair game.
There you go. You heard it here first. Denise, Howell, thank you so much for sitting in on TNT. I really appreciate it. It's great to have you. Let folks know about everything you're doing.
Well, I do Twill, of course, at twit.tv/Twill every Friday at 11 o'clock Pacific Time, 1800 UTC.
If you missed Iyaz Akhtar in today's TNT because he's busy switching the show, you can watch him on Twill. So check it out.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being
here. Thanks, Denise.
Scott Johnson, thank you for being here as well. Of your Frog Pants empire, what corner would you like to shine a light on for us?
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you guys. I'll shine a light on the general corner. Just go to frogpants.com. Everything I do is right there.
So, sneakily, did you notice he shined a light on the entire empire at once?
Yes, empire is the word.
That's what emperors do.
That's right. That's why I'm not an emperor.
Yeah.
I'm not good at that stuff. No, check it out, frogpants.com. Appreciate having Scott on. Thanks, everybody, for watching. That's our first week in the new studio.
In the can. Good first week, everybody.
You can find us on the web, twit.tv/TNT. You can email us, TNT@twit.tv, and give us a call and leave us a voicemail. Our number is 260-TNT-SHOW. We will see you on Monday.